We do.
Awesome. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Alice Bonner and I chair the Moving Forward Nursing Home Quality Coalition. Some of you I get to see regularly on calls, which is great. And some of you are new to our monthly coalition conversations. We're very glad that you've joined today. We almost always have a very diverse audience, a very diverse group of people on these calls, and it makes for very lively conversations, discussion, Q&A. So we're really looking forward to that. And I see our colleague, Dr. Jane Carmody has just joined. Jane, welcome. And I know everybody's muted right now, but yeah, we got the thumbs up. Thank you. We're very glad Jane's with the John A. Hartford Foundation, and she's our senior program officer. So, it's great for her to be able to hear the conversations and presentations on these calls. So today we're going to hear from a couple of colleagues from an organization called Barrier Free Living, or BFL. And they're an organization that centers the voices of people with disabilities and survivors of domestic violence in shaping their own paths towards safety and independence. And you're going to hear a lot more about that. They're going to talk about how BFL supports a whole range of supportive housing models, transitional apartments, permanent residences, all different ways that reflect the ways people live in a community. And, their approach really emphasizes designing services and spaces in response to the housing preferences and evolving needs of residents, including people who are transitioning out of nursing homes. And a lot of us on these calls work within nursing homes, but we're going to talk about nursing homes within communities as well today. So we're really excited to learn more about them and how the work that they do can inspire more care, better care and housing options for older people and people with disabilities. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion and Q&A after the presentation. So right now, everybody's muted. If you have questions that you want to put in the chat, please type them into the chat. And Claire Rogowski, who I should have introduced in the beginning, who's our new program manager. Claire is leading on tech and helped to organize this call today. But she and I will watch in the chat for any questions, and then we'll also be taking questions, and people can come off mute when we're in the Q&A section of the program. So with that, I want to introduce our guest today, Cynthia Amodeo, who's the Chief Executive Officer, and Diana Turner, who's the Chief Program Officer for Barrier Free Living. Cynthia is a licensed mental health counselor. She specializes in the intersection of domestic violence and disabilities. She began as a children's counselor at Freedom House and took on the role of CEO in 2022. She got her Master of Education and Master of Arts from Teachers College at Columbia University in 2006. And Diana Turner started her career in nonprofits 18 years ago, working in a domestic violence shelter. She was a supervising residential specialist and gave insight into quality of life for residential life and domestic violence survivors. So Diana was able to merge her experience in domestic violence and supportive housing. As Chief Program Officer, she's going to strengthen and develop programming with the goal of enhancing the quality of life for survivors with disabilities. And she graduated from the Hunter School of Social Work with an MSW. So with that, Cynthia and Diana, I am just going to turn it over to you and take it away.
Thank you so much, Alice.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to go ahead and start sharing. So if you just give me a moment, hopefully the powers that be in the IT world cooperate. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, we're off to a good start. So like Alice mentioned, I'm Cynthia and I'm the CEO of Barrier Free Living, and my colleague here, Diana, our Chief Program Officer. I'm going to give the beginning of the presentation where we'll talk a little bit about BFL and the work that we do. And then Diana will take it over and start talking more about our newest project, Freedom Village. So for those who don't know who we are, what we do, I'm just going to give a little bit of history We started way back when in 1978 with our founder, Paul Feuerstein, and he started a federally funded project called Project Outward Bound. We were really looking at people with disabilities coming out of homeless shelter, and where, not out of homeless shelter, actually out of hospitals, and where they were going. And at the time, there really was nowhere for them to go. So he developed what is now known as barrier-free living and opened a transitional housing program on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the early 1980s. That program no longer exists anymore. We took that building down, and Diana is going to talk about that newest building where we rebuilt. But from that program in transitional housing, what we learned is that a lot of people who were coming into the program had histories of victimization. And that's where we have now our Secret Garden program. And that's been around since 1990. And that's a very specific community-based domestic violence program for people with disabilities. When I say the word disabilities, we serve all disabilities, medical, mental health, cognitive, intellectual, sensory, I can keep going on. I mean, all the disabilities. We do not ask for any documentation proving the disability when they come into Secret Garden. Sometimes there is, documentation that's required depending on what type of program we might be applying for, assistance we're applying for. But to get into our programs, we do not require you to prove your disability at the beginning of the services. So at Secret Garden, we provide case management services, counseling services for domestic violence and sexual assault. We have a collaboration where we provide legal services. One of the very unique features that we offer is occupational therapy services to our survivors as well. And people can come to us at any point in their journey. It can be they're an active victim, they're an active violent situation, or it could have happened 10 years ago and now they're looking for help and services. So at any point in their journey, they can come and ask for help. We are New York City centered. So Secret Garden does only assist people within the 5 boroughs of New York City. Freedom House is our domestic violence crisis shelter. So what we learned from Secret Garden, all of our programs grow out of each other, is that there was no domestic violence crisis shelters for people with disabilities. So we built Freedom House. We're going on 20 years next year. And at the time, we were the first fully accessible ADA compliant domestic violence crisis shelter in the United States. And as of now, from my knowledge, we're still the only one in New York City. So we provide service to everyone, regardless of disability there. If you're a survivor and in need of shelter, most people who are coming to us, they're in active, very violent situations and they're fleeing from their victimization. They come to us for safety, and they can come from anywhere as long as they can get to us. So we've had people all over the United States and out of the country come to us for services. And I'm going to show Freedom House in a few minutes because everyone's always very interested in what a fully accessible shelter looks like. So I will show you some pictures. I can't tell you where we're located because that is confidential. From Freedom House, what we learned is that about 20% of our population needed supportive housing. So they just weren't ready to go into the community on their own for a variety of different reasons. So we built what we call barrier-free living apartments. And we have 2 buildings currently there. We have a building, 50 units for families and 70 units for single individuals. For the single individuals, that's what we call a SPIMI population. So severe and persistent mental health diagnosis with chronic homelessness. So they have to be homeless a minimum of 365 days. Whereas in our family building, they just have to be risk of homelessness. So meaning really they're just in shelter, and there needs to be a disability with the head of household, and it can be any disability and need support services to be in the community. We have enjoyed being in the supportive housing world. So when the opportunity came to close our old transitional housing building, we did decide to build a new supportive housing program, which we're calling Freedom Village. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Okay. So just a little overview of what domestic violence is, so we're all working from the same page. Domestic violence is typically what we think about is physical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, economic emotional abuse. We also add in medical abuse because of the population that we work with. So using some of the medical needs against them. And that's what we call the tactics that are used to maintain power and control in a relationship. So typically when you think of domestic violence or DV, you're thinking of the tactics, right? So if someone's hit, if their money's being taken from them, if maybe they're being sexually abused, those are tactics, again, to maintain power in a relationship. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. If you have any questions, just ask. And violence can occur in all different types of relationships. Typically, when we think of domestic violence, we think about couples, people in dating relationships. It could be people who have children in common, same-sex partners. In our work, we also consider violence between adult family members. It could be an adult child abusing their parent. It could be siblings having victimization issues. It can be caregivers abusing the person that they're caring for. So we do expand what a relationship means. Okay. So I just want to spend a minute talking about the intersectionality between domestic violence and people with disabilities. In general, there's a whole lot of research out there, but in general, people with disabilities are 3 times more likely to experience violent victimization. I'm just going to read a few other stats to you. So women with disabilities have a 40% greater risk of experiencing violence. That's simply by having disability puts you at greater risk of being victimized. Women with developmental disabilities, they have among the highest rates of physical, sexual, emotional violence perpetuated by an intimate partner and family members. Most common perpetrators are former or current intimate partners. And it's estimated that 80% of women who have disabilities have been sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. I'm using all these stats, but I think it's important to recognize that these are the things that are reported and people are answering surveys on, right? And how we define disability by the researchers also impacted. So there are some variables here. But one thing that it's important to consider is that it's estimated between 70 and 85% of abuse against people with disability goes unreported. So very high rates of people not reporting the abuse that they're experiencing. So these numbers, this research that we're reading and we see, there could be more people that are impacted simply because of it's not being reported. So very high correlation. But why, right? We get this question quite often. Why are people with disabilities affected at these rates? And we do have some answers. Fewer economic resources, that's a huge one. So sometimes people's Social Security income or their benefits is taken from them and they don't have access to their financial resources. We do know that people with disabilities have lower rates of employment. So that obtaining gainful employment is difficult for some individuals based off their disability sometimes. So that's one reason. Some people do have difficulty living independently. So if your caregiver is the one who's abusing you, leaving that relationship makes it a bit more difficult. So it could be your partner, it could be someone living in your household, it could be your caregiver, but there is an automatic power differential that occurs if you need help. Some programs are just inaccessible. That's just the reality. As soon as you say the word disability, the service may go away, or the physical building that the service is housed in just can't accommodate the person with a disability. People with disabilities are often less likely to be believed. I've heard many, many times over the years, well, you didn't understand, they were the caregiver, they're just doing their job, they got really frustrated and hit them, they didn't mean it. So those sorts of things we hear very often. There is a lack of education, particularly when we're talking about people with intellectual or developmental disabilities in the school system around sex and relationships. So very frequently, we're the ones to tell people, oh, what you're experiencing as actually abuse. That's not what we would call a healthy relationship. So the mere recognition that this is not normal, being hurt this way, you don't have to put up with, that's not okay. People aren't able to recognize it. From very early on, people with disabilities are taught to be encouraged to be trusting and compliant. So, for example, that's your doctor, that's your nurse, that's your caregiver. They're there to help you. They would not do anything wrong to you. So if something bad does happen, it's like, oh no, that's the nurse. That can't happen. That would never happen. And they say, well, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I misunderstood. And the person with the disability oftentimes will say, oh, well, maybe it was just me. Maybe I didn't understand. That's my teacher. They would never do something like that to hurt me. And a lot of these factors just indicate isolation, right? From support services. So if you have few economic resources, if you're unable to live independently on your own, if you call places and you're constantly told, oh, we can't help you, it makes your world a bit smaller and smaller as time goes on. I want to stop here for a moment and just see if there's any questions, because I said a lot. Anything in the chat?
I do not see a lot of questions in the chat yet, Cynthia, so
Okay, great.
I think you're good.
So this is Freedom House. We're very proud of our building. So we do not have any shared spaces. Typically, when people think of domestic violence shelters, they think of shared spaces and community rooms. There are shelters like that, yes, but that is not ours. So everyone has their own apartment. Think about like a hotel room. So there's a door here, that would be the bedroom. So we can keep closing or opening these doors to make our units bigger or smaller. So we can accommodate very small families from a single individual or a caregiver with a baby or a child, up to very large spaces of 7 or 8 children, for example. We've also had families with intergenerational families. So you have maybe a mother, a grandmother, and a child, right? That are all coming into shelter. So we can accommodate lots of different family styles. This is our kitchen here. As you can see, there's only a stovetop. There is no oven. And that's for folks who are wheelchair users, that they could easily slide in and cook on their own. That's one accessibility feature. We do have ovens. Those are on our training kitchen if people need an oven. This is our social work suites. The pictures maybe not be great. There's a double hallway, so wheelchair users can come and go without like interfering with each other. As you can see, it's very colorful and bright, which we like, but it's for people with low vision, for example. You can see where this yellow is, it goes into a doorway, right? These yellow go into the doorway. So someone who's low vision could see, oh, there's a door there, right? And this color contrast all over the walls. You can see it better here in the lobby photo, that there's a darker trim to the door, so people can see where a door begins and ends. So there are features all over the building like this. So we tried to take into consideration all different types of disabilities when designing the building. I just want to keep into context that Paul created this building 20 years ago. 20 years ago, these things were really inventive and innovative. And we're still talking about what an accessible shelter looks like today in 2025. We do have some staff that are, we don't have any staff currently that are social work staff that are deaf, but we do have staff that speak ASL to accommodate our deaf clients, though we do hire deaf staff as well. Any questions about the shelter?
I'll just that Jane chatted about every aspect of design has been considered. Wow, she wrote. And Cindy Napolitan said 7.5-year resident in long-term care, leading leadership council. Oh, she's just putting in all the different things that she does as an advocate in the nursing home where she's living. So thanks for that, Cindy. Anybody else want to chime in about about the presentation and anything about the design or anything else? If you wanna speak directly, please ask for Claire to unmute you, request to be unmuted, and we'll do that.
We've gotten one question from Karen who says, have you considered any requirements needed for the unhoused?
So in the shelter program specifically, we have I didn't get into the program. I think that's a great segue into our programs itself. So everyone's assigned a social worker or a mental health counselor when they come into the program, and it's really focused on safety, number one. So when you come into domestic violence shelter specifically, our focus is not on housing. You become homeless because of the victimization. And yes, it's a priority. However, our priority is maintaining safety because you're fleeing someone who's very dangerous and wants to really hurt you. So when someone comes in, that is really our focus, is making sure that they have their basic needs, food, clothing, because typically people are coming with literally just what's on their back, and they can take, for us, on the subway or the bus, and they're coming into shelter. And then healing and making sure we can help maintain that person's safety from continuing to get hurt. We do have a case manager where they focus on housing and entitlements, because yes, they are becoming homeless while living it because of the victimization. So we do apply for all the different types of housing that are available to them. And we also make sure they have access to their financial resources. So sometimes people come in and they have jobs, and we have to talk about safety planning for their work. Or they can come in with a lack of resources, and we have to get them hooked up to the benefits that they qualified for. Sometimes people will come in and say, I don't have Social Security, I don't have health insurance. And then we go apply, and it's like, oh, you actually do. And it's the person who's abusing you that have access to that money. They just never were told about it, right? So that does happen sometimes as well. We do have occupational therapy on site there as well. And it's to help people with activities of daily living. We have a training kitchen there because sometimes this is the first time they're cooking for themselves, and that's okay. We do a lot of group work around social skills and self-care, because we really want to make sure people are healing from what they experienced. And we do a lot of job skills. So for some people who do want to go to work, back to work, or it could be going back to school, they do help with that as well, like figuring out, well, what are my next steps? Do I want to go to work? Do I not want to go to work? Maybe I want to go to a program to just like get my feet wet back and take a class, right? So they do help a lot about that. We do have children at that program. So we have a center for the children that they can go to while mom or dad is receiving services. And we have lots of after school activities, and it's probably the funnest place you'll be. They have movie nights and game nights, and we do outings sometimes, like when there's school holidays. So it is a fun place, and we provide counseling to our children as well, because they've experienced and witnessed violence themselves. I think I got it all. We do work a lot with our community-based program though as well. So we do focus on housing, and we do hook them up with the housing that they would qualify for, but it is not our primary focus, just because our primary focus is on keeping them safe.
Yeah, and I think, thank you so much for those explanations. There's a few other comments here in the chat. Karen also followed up with a question about any best practices for those dealing with abuse later in life. And so we would say abuse, maltreatment or mistreatment. There's a lot of research on that right now. It's an increasing problem nationally. And I don't know if you want to say a few words about that. You kind of addressed some of that, Cynthia, in your conversation already, but to your point, there are resources that people really need to know about, like elder abuse hotline in every state and things like that. But do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we've been working with, we'll call elder abuse now, but I'm not too sure. It depends on the state you're in about what qualifies as an elder. But we've always been working with older adults and called it domestic violence. So our oldest resident in shelter was 75 years old. And it's not uncommon for us to have an older adult in shelter. And typically it's their adult child abusing them. It could be a partner that's abusing them. and they've realized, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. But going into shelter is a bit difficult for older adults, because when you come into shelter, you're really leaving everything behind. You can't tell anybody where you are. It is going into hiding, basically. So if you typically it's a family member is like, you can't go into shelter, you're 70 years old, I have to know where you are. That is a barrier for some folks. So we typically work with our older adults if they're not ready for shelter in our Secret Garden program, and figuring out what's going to be the best course of action for them. So for some folks, they're okay with staying in the abusive relationship, and we're just figuring out how to keep them safe while in that living environment. So we can do that work as well. And sometimes we do have to call adult protective services depending on the severity of what's going on. So it really is what's so special about BFL is that it's very individualized work. We have standards, of course, but we really look at the individual person and we ask them what they want, and we go that course of action. As long as they're not a danger to themselves or other people, we really figure out what do they want, how do they want to move forward, and that's what we do. But that takes a lot of counseling, right?
Yeah, that's a lot. And, there's a lot you mentioned about safety, and, prevention is so critical with domestic violence and elder abuse as well. And so, knowing when people are in a high risk situation, and again, sharing information about how they can access services. It's very frightening to be, needless to say, in these situations, and people don't often know what to do or how to get help and how to keep themselves safe, as you said. So, but there are resources. There's a lot of work through the Department of Justice. They have a special sort of elder abuse kind of division that does some work with different states and other things. Just a few more things before we get back to your presentation. I know you have other things to share. Nancy Tutors was asking, and I have the same question, who pays for these housing facilities in terms of either the initial construction, like the capital costs, or who pays for people to be able to live there?
That's a great question, and it's a combination of city, state, and federal funding. That's the very simple answer. Our newest project, Freedom Village, really was a huge collaboration between the city and state to make it happen. So there's no one source, there's many sources. For Freedom House specifically, there's the state funded the building back then, and the day-to-day services are funded by the city. And our community-based program is a variety of funding sources, 12 actually. And our current supportive housing, again, capital was a variety of city and state funders, and our day-to-day program is city funding.
Great, thank you. And Jane Carmody chatted in, for anybody who's not aware, about the Weinberg Center on Elder Justice. So that's one of the centers that is focused on that as well. And then last question right now is Cindy Napolitan asked, did you say that single people must be homeless for 365 days before being eligible for this type of housing?
So for our barrier-free living apartments, for our single units, yes, that is correct. So there's lots of different types of supportive housing out there in New York, but for our housing that's currently available, that we need chronic homelessness with a severe mental health disability. For the new building, that is not the case. That's just for our current housing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we're back to you guys for any more that you would like to present.
Yeah, we're continuing.
All right.
Back to the Lower East Side. So this used to be a very small building. I think it was 5 or 6 stories. That was our transitional housing where we housed 24 people. Paul Feuerstein purchased that building for $1 back in the late 1970s because the Lower East Side was not a very desirable neighborhood. That building, we had to tear it down just because it got old and it took a lot of money to bring it to where it needed to be structurally. So the city and state said, tear it down and build some more housing. So that's the rendering, the artist rendering of what it will look like in just a few short months. We are expecting to have TCO this fall, which is when we will start accepting our newest tenants. So Diana is going to take it on from here.
Hello, everybody. So Freedom Village is a unique program. We have 74 units, 44 are set aside for our domestic violence survivors, and we have 30 units set aside for our elderly population. The frail and elderly are considered 55 and older, that are living in nursing homes and are ready to transition into permanent housing. I think one of the things that is important for us to just know is that as we developed each of our programs within barrier-free living, we started to see a need, like from our community base to our shelters to our supportive housing, is what's going to be the next steps for people. What are the other choices they may have? In our supportive housing program, which is going on 10 years in July of this year, we started seeing that a lot of our population ended up in nursing homes due to a variety of reasons, due to illness or just aging and not having the supports that they needed in place within the current supportive housing program that we're in. So we started coordinating with nursing homes and figuring out how do we best meet unmet need for our elderly population. And it was a little challenging for us because we didn't have all of these different services besides OT in place. So when we developed Freedom Village, we were thinking about just the larger population and the scope and saying, hey, maybe people might want a choice to live in permanent housing, even though their needs may be a little higher in terms of independent living. So that need to give somebody else another choice was like very important for us, and we were really excited to have this program put in place. The criteria for the 30 units set aside for our elderly population was they had to have a nursing home waiver to qualify for housing at Freedom Village. And then the 44 units, the criteria for that was domestic violence survivor, with it being in a homeless shelter, have a history of homelessness in terms of domestic violence. So very low barrier, but again, we wanted to make sure that we were able to meet those needs. So we're excited to be here because we wanted to see how we could coordinate for particularly with our elderly population, with other nursing homes, to see that maybe people that may want to have a choice to live independently but just don't know what kind of supports or options are out there for them. So the nursing home model for us is very important to coordinate. A lot of our referrals are going to be coming from nursing homes and people that just want another option as opposed to living in a nursing home. So we're very excited about that.
Thanks, Diana. I also want to mention that one thing I forgot, I made a note and I forgot to say earlier, is that sometimes people end up living in nursing homes because of the victimization that they experienced. So we have had people, unfortunately, due to the severe violence that they experienced, have to go to nursing home to heal. And then because they had to leave their home, right, they end up homeless essentially, and they can't be discharged from the nursing home because they have nowhere to go. And they end up kind of being a little feeling stuck, and because they don't want to be there, right? It wasn't their choice to get there. They were hurt, and that's how they ended up there. So there is some correlation in the work that we're doing. Any questions? Any other questions? I want to make sure we answer everything.
Are you done with the slides, Cynthia? If you want, you can take them down and
just our contact.
yes. Oh, okay, that's great. Yep.
Yeah.
You can put that in the chat as well.
Okay. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. So Jean just asked, is Freedom Village a temporary residence for 55 plus?
No, they will have leases like anybody who rents from a management company. They will have to re-up their lease every year and present their documentation related to the lease up, but they can stay there for as long as they would like. Many of our tenants who started with us 10 years ago are still with us.
Well, you know, permanent supportive housing is a critical issue. And I know we've got a lot of people on this call. We have people from Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. We have people who are, you know, doing advocacy. We have faculty from universities and others. And, you know, the epidemic of older adult homelessness is significant right now. I'm sure everybody on this call, if you're living in a major city or an urban or a suburban or rural environment, it can be in any of those locations. There's just a lot of older adults, and you know, we see people who are living on the streets, but there's also people who are, you know, so-called couch surfing, or just going from one person's apartment or home to another. So this is a really, really big deal. These are individuals who, for whatever, you know, whatever caused their episode of homelessness late in their life. And a lot of these folks now have significant health issues, or mental health and physical health issues. So permanent supportive housing, as Cynthia was describing, is so much more important for a lot of these individuals than just a temporary place until a particular situation maybe resolves. And to your point earlier, Cynthia, you know, sometimes people think a situation is going to get better and they go back to it because they don't feel like they have an alternative. But very often, you know, these things do recur. So, you know, long-term care ombudsmen are key. We didn't really mention adult protective services, but that's, you know, these are organizations in every state. They're in different departments, but these are workers who are trained in working with anyone who is in an abusive situation and at risk. And so there's a hotline. Every state has a hotline for contacting adult protective services as well. And so sometimes they can, you know, put people in touch with a social worker or psychologist or whatever the needs are. So I know Claire wrote in again about, you know, anybody who wants to ask a question, please ask for Claire to unmute you, and we'd love to hear from you. Karen wrote another question. Have any of your housing plans changed based on lessons learned from the pandemic? That's a great question. What would you guys say?
We actually started building Freedom Village pre-pandemic. It just took us a lot longer to get here. We're very grateful to be here finally.
Yeah.
Because we started this project, I think it was 2017. So it just took us a long time to get through the closing.
Right.
And to gather all the money, and as time went on, costs went up, construction costs went up. So we needed to continue to gather more and more money. But we made it happen, and we're here now. So this is really a labor of love for me. We've been working so hard on it for so many years. So
Yeah.
I have personally chosen every single like little the countertops, the colors, the mirrors, the handheld showers, the seats for the showers. We're really excited. It is very accessible, and from the studio apartments to our 3-bedroom. So we have studios for our frail elderly who are coming out of the nursing home, but we do have 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units for our families who are in the domestic violence situation. So it really will be a unique environment because you'll have a group of single individuals and families living in the same community. So Diana and I are definitely planning on how are we going to build community, not just within the Lower East Side, because it's important when someone comes into a community that they get, you know, oriented to where's the bank, where's the supermarket, where am I living now, right? But also the community of Freedom Village. So we will have support services there. There will be social workers assigned to everybody to help them maybe open a bank account or make sure that their home health aid services are getting coordinated. We will have occupational therapy there, as we do in all of our programs. We will have family services for our families to build engagement. So there will be a lot, it's 24/7 services as well. We will have security, what we call front desk staff, letting people in and out, because security is obviously a big part of the work that we do to maintain safety in the building for everybody. We'll have a garden, which we're really excited about. We have a beautiful patio. And I'll just say the views are incredible.
That's great. You have another question. Did you have any resistance from the neighborhood
No. No, not at all. Because we've been on the Lower East Side for 40 years, we have a well-established relationship with our community board. And over the years, we've gone to them, explained the progress. We've received many letters of support, and they're very excited to have us back.
Great.
Mhm.
Other questions for our speakers? Marissa wrote in, can you elaborate on the financial support available for the 55+ group in Freedom Village to help pay their monthly rent?
So everyone will be required to pay 30% of their income. That is part of the requirement. We do help make sure that people are connected to the resources that they need if they're having trouble paying their rent, such as one-shot deal. That's an example. But we do foster independence. And I say the word independent loosely. Paul Menz said to me one time, think about that word, because we're all dependent on each other. And I really want to mention that here. So I rely on the babysitter to go pick up my child from school, right? I rely on Barrier Free Living to pay me so I can pay my rent and my bills. Like, we're all relying on each other. I rely on Diana for a whole lot. So are we really independent? I don't know. Because we're all relying on each other for some sort of level of support at the end of the day. And that's how we really like to think about what independent means. Can I pay my bills? Can I support myself? But what does that look like for that individual? And how do we get them to that, whatever their goal is? Does it mean paying their rent for the first time? Maybe it's getting them set up with Quick Pay so they don't miss a deadline because maybe they have a brain injury, right? And they may be forgetful. So Quick Pay is wonderful. So those are some examples. So we'll
And
help
then
support.
also,
Go ahead, Diana.
sorry, no, I was saying we also coordinate with APS to help us with people that are having issues with paying their rent on time, and then they're able to take over like money management with their department, which we do that already. Because the goal is not to have anybody fail, right? So if we can give them the choices and the options that they do have out there, which most people are not aware, then we give them that option. And some people don't want anybody having control over that part of their rent and utilities, but it's always an option that we can give them and have for them. So yeah, we individualize like everybody that we work with because everybody has different needs at any given time and different options. And some people are like, you know what, maybe this won't work for me and I might need to be in a more supported setting. And we do have issues where we've sent people back and they've thrived and succeeded in the nursing home setting. But we wanted to give the people that didn't want to go into a nursing home a setting that they can have those options and we could still put those supports. And then we have our own internal resources as well with our other programs and our community-based offices. So we explore all the options before we say there's no more options, right? Based on people's choice. We have to make sure that we're following people's wishes as well.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts about any of this? I think it's really nice for us to take a little bit of a break and learn about a program that is closely related to what a lot of us do and yet has very unique elements to it. One of the things Cynthia and Diana and Claire and I were talking about before the call started was that a lot of staff members who work in nursing homes, some of them are the victims of domestic violence and abuse. And so just, being sensitive to that just because of who those individuals are and thinking about it, these are a lot of people who are very poor and have very difficult lives. And so, just being sensitive and thinking about, opportunities to support them just seems like, again, something valuable that we can do and contribute. Yeah.
So the stat is 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 men have experienced victimization at some point in their lifetime. That's just the general population. So statistically speaking, there's a number of us even on this call who have experienced victimization at some point in our lives. So yep, we're everywhere, but it is definitely a silent epidemic that we're often not talking about still. It's still something that happens behind the closed doors. And Diana and I are really trying to bring to light that there is services and there is help, and there's organizations like ours that do want to help you and will, in whatever way that people want to be helped.
Great. Other thoughts from anybody? I know,
I think there's one question from earlier that was, are there any issues with studio versus one bedroom?
That's a good-
I'm not too sure what's meant by issues. It's just one smaller than the other.
well, a one bedroom has two rooms though, the general part and then the bedroom part, and a studio would just be one, usually would just be one big room. So do people, say, that a studio is too small? I don't know. I mean,
Oh, I mean, New York City standards, it's a decent sized studio, but that's perspective.
that's right. That's right.
I don't have the listing of the square footage off the top of my head, that I don't recall, but I've been in the space many, many times. And you can fit easily like a little table and chairs, a little a bed, and a seating area.
Mhm. Sounds nice. Well, if other folks don't have questions, I might invite Jane Carmody. Maybe we can unmute you, Jane, and see if you have anything to add. I know you did send a comment in the chat earlier, but any final thoughts for our group here today?
Well, Alice and Claire and the team, always glad to attend the conversation projects, coalition conversations, because they're always fascinating. We always learn something new. And I agree, this was something a little different than what I think we were thinking about, but definitely something that is an issue. I was thinking, Alice, there is a group, and this is something I want to maybe refer some of these discussions to. There's a group within New York, in the New York Academy of Medicine, and it is called Emerging Aging Leaders. They are where we're trying to cultivate more people to be interested in working with older people in the aging population. And one of the things that we did do is talk about design. And they talked about the design, Alice, not only of nursing homes, but design of where we shop, and I mean, just in terms of design. So it was just kind of fascinating. And then, Alice, I just wanted to add, I was at a call earlier that I want to talk to you about, but it was talking about, our work where we try to engage students, and it could be all kinds of students, social work students, in working with older people, whether it be in a nursing home or whether it be in a senior center or someplace. And they had an example of a nurse who wanted to go to the ER. That's where she wanted to work. But they had in school, an opportunity for her to work, more closely with aging services, area agencies on aging, nursing homes. And in 6 months, she said, I'm staying in aging. This is where my heart is. So we know if we can get enough people, Cynthia and Diana, the great work you're doing, get enough people interested in opportunities of residencies or something, experiences that we know we can help shape more people. I really appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate your work there. As we know, this is needed. We need, 1,500 of these across the city and across the country, more than that, but really appreciate it. Alice, I would just say that the foundation is very supportive of aging. That's all we do. That's our mission. And we do that through age-friendly health systems and caregivers and serious illness, social isolation. So Alice is a key grantee in this work, as she is really working hard to improve the care of older people, especially those that reside in nursing homes and community services. And so that's the work that she's doing. And I just want to applaud you, Alice, for having this great conversation today.
Well, thank you very much. And we should also give Isaac Longobardi credit. He's off to medical school, but he reached out and connected us with Cynthia and Diana. So we're grateful. If there's no other final comments, I just want to say on behalf of myself and Claire, so thank you, Claire. You did a beautiful job today leading us through. But just many thanks to Cynthia and Diana for the incredible work that they're doing. And just really appreciate your sharing your time with us today. I know we've got Jelana Hayes and Marissa Berg, two aspiring long-term care professionals, and just really, really grateful for everything. Jane, to your question, he's going to Stanford, so there you go. Anyway, but thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you for the work you do every day. Claire and Jennifer and I are going to continue to put these presentations together, and so you'll hear from us in another month or so about the next opportunity. So Claire, anything else from you?
I will send a follow-up email with Cynthia and Diana's contact information for those of you who have any further questions that come up later or just want to get in contact, and we'll be sending the slides out as a PowerPoint. And as is usual with the Coalition Conversations, we've recorded this, so I will upload that for all of you to be able to view, or to send on to others who may not have been able to attend, but were interested in what was presented today. But just to echo Alice, thank you, Cynthia and Diana, for this lovely presentation. It was great to learn more about the work that you're doing. And thank you everyone for attending and asking such good questions in the chat as well.
Awesome. All right. Have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of your
You too. Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.